Last week, I gave the opening line for the power of attorney conversation, the reframe, the exact words, and I know some of you used it. I know because you wrote to me. Some of you said it worked. Your mom engaged. Your dad actually answered the question. The conversation that had been frozen for about 2 years had finally started moving. And some of you said this, Barbara, I did everything right. I asked the question. I gave them time. I stayed calm. And they still will not sign. So today we are having the harder conversation. What happens when your parent will not sign the documents? What your options actually are, what the law says, and what the clock says, right? And the one move I have seen work, even when nothing else does. Because here is the truth. Nobody wants to say out loud. There is a window for this. And the window does not stay open forever. So, welcome to the Aging Parent Playbook. I'm Dr. Barbara Sparacino. I'm a triple board certified psychiatrist in adult psychiatry, geriatric psychiatry, and addiction medicine. I am a coach, and I am a daughter, just like so many of you. This show exists for one reason: to help you stop scrambling and start planning, because the families who plan before the crisis look completely different in the crisis than the families who wait. I have stood next to both kinds of families for 15 years. And I know which one I want you to be. If you are new here, last week's episode 61, is the natural place to start. That episode covers why your parent is really resisting the power of attorney conversation and the opening line that works. Today builds directly on it. Go back and listen if you have not, then come right back. All right, let's get into it. So I want you to take a breath. Refusal is not the end of the road. So let's start by lowering your heart rate a little, because if your parent refused or stalled or keeps saying not yet, I know what it feels like in your body. It feels like a door slamming. It feels like rejection. And for a lot of you, it feels like fear, because you can see something coming that your parent cannot see or will not see, or so here's the first thing I need you to understand. In my 15 years as a geriatric psychiatrist, the parents who eventually signed almost never signed it on the first conversation or even the second. Most of them told me some version of the same, sentence. I had been thinking about it for a year. A year. The conversations you think are failing are often working. They are just working underground. They're percolating where you cannot see them. So your parent is metabolizing the idea slowly, privately, on their own timeline, not yours. So refusal today is not refusal forever, but it is information about where they are in the process. And your job in this stage is not to win. Your job is to keep the door open while the process runs. That said, I am not going to pretend that the clock does not run out. It does, right? And we are going to talk about the clock in part 3, but strategy first, right? So here are the 4 ways to keep the conversation alive without forcing it. And so what are the 4 ways to keep the conversation alive, right? Move 1, stop having the conversation. Once, have 12. The biggest mistake I see families make is treating this like a one and done, right? The sit down, the family meeting, the big talk after a Sunday dinner where everyone is tense and your mother knows something is coming the moment she sees your face, right? Don't do that. Don't make it bigger than it needs to be. Do the opposite. Make it 12 micro conversations over 6 months. Tiny, casual, repeated. 1 week you mentioned that you finally did your own healthcare proxy. And you say how surprisingly easy it was. Because that's the whole conversation, you know? You move on. Another week, you mention an article you read. Another week, you ask one small question and accept whatever answer comes. You are not building pressure, right? You are building familiarity. The brain stops treating an idea as a threat when it's heard the idea many times in a low stakes moment, right? Move 2, use other family stories, not yours, when you say, Mom, I'm worried about what happens if you have a fall. Your mother hears something about herself. She hears your fear. She hears decline. She hears worry. And then you know what? The wall goes up. And so when you say, my friend Karen's mom had a fall last month and there was no power of attorney, and Karen spent 4 weeks fighting with the bank just to pay her mother's electric bill, hey, you know what? Something different happens. Your mother gets to think about Karen's mom. She gets to have opinions about Karen's situation. And she gets to say, well, that was poor planning. And feel a little superior. And then go quietly think about her own paperwork. Stories travel where direct asks do not, right? They let your parent approach the topic without being the topic, right? And by the way, you do not need a friend named Karen to make this work. The news does it for you. A celebrity estate fight. A newspaper story about a guardianship case gone wrong. Hand your father the article and say nothing more than, this was interesting. Then let him bring it up. Parents who will not respond to a question will often respond to a headline because the headline asks nothing of them. Move 3. Pick the quiet moment. You know, like not the scary one, never the scary one. Most families bring this up right after something frightening has happened. The ER visit, the fender bender, the afternoon that mom got confused at the pharmacy. And it feels logical to us, right? Because the event proved the point. But to them, it can kind of feel retaliatory, right? Clinically, it's exactly backward. After a scare, your parent is already feeling vulnerable, already feeling watched, already grieving a little piece of their independence. And now their child wants legal authority? Of course it feels and lands like a power grab, even if that was not the intention, right? Even when the intention was love, the impact wasn't. The brain resists when it feels under threat. So bring it up on a quiet afternoon, in the car, while you're cooking together, when nothing is wrong. That is when the idea can be heard as planning instead of as a verdict. Move 4. Change the messenger. Look, this is the one families often forget. You may simply be the wrong person to deliver this message. Not because of anything you did, right? Because you are the child. There is 50 years or more in the room every time you speak, right? There is the 8-year-old you once were. There is the power shift your parent can feel happening and maybe hates. But the same message from their doctor lands differently, right? From their attorney, from their financial advisor, right? From their pastor or their oldest friend. So at the next appointment, you can quietly ask the physician, would you be willing to ask my dad or my mom whether their advance directives are in place? Most of us will. Look, I've had that conversation hundreds of times. And I will tell you, the number of parents who say to me, you know, my daughter has been after me about this with a little smile and then ask me what I think they should do is remarkable, right? They were never really refusing the idea. They were refusing the role reversal. The scripts for the stuck moments, you know, before I want to leave, I want to give you exact words for the 3 objections I hear most, because The 4 moves gets you in the conversation, and these scripts get you through the hard moments inside it. So, objection 1. You're after my money. Or the softer version, the suspicious look, the why are you so interested in my finances all of a sudden? Do not defend yourself. Defending confirms the frame. Instead, agree with the instinct and redirect. So, like, look, try this. Good. I want you to be suspicious. That instinct is exactly why the documents matter. Because they let you choose who has authority and exactly how much authority, instead of leaving it to a judge who has never met you before. And if you would feel better naming someone else, name someone else. I just want someone named. That last sentence is the key. The moment you make it clear, you are fine not being the agent. The power grab story collapses. And here's a secret. You actually have to mean it. A parent can smell the difference, right? Objection 2. I'm not dying. We can do this later. Do not argue about their health. Right? Agree and separate the document from the dying. You're right. And that is exactly why now is the time. These documents are for healthy people. They are like a seatbelt. You put it on when nothing's wrong. Precisely because you cannot put it on during the accident. The people who sign these in a hospital bed are the ones who waited too long. You are reframing the signature from a concession about decline into a thing healthy, organized people do. Because it is, right? This is the truth. Objection 3. Your father handled all of it. Or it's all taken care of, said with a wave of the hand when you have quietly confirmed it is not. Do not call the bluff directly. Get curious and said, wow, that's great. Can you show me where it is? Because if something happened on a Tuesday night, I would need to put my hands on it fast. And one of two things happens. Either the document does exist and you know where it is. So this is a genuine win. Go check them for the word durable, or the search comes up empty and your parent discovers the gap themselves, which lands 100 times harder than you announcing it. Let the empty drawer make your argument for you. 3 scripts. Steal them word for word and notice the pattern in all 3. You never argue the emotion. You agree with it, and then you give it somewhere better to go. We don't get anywhere with arguing with emotions because emotions are in fact, right? They're just feelings. So, part 3, capacity and competence, the 2 words that decide everything. Now, this is when we need to talk about the clock. And to talk about the clock, you need to know 2 words, capacity and competence. Families use them interchangeably. Legally and medically, they are completely different things. And the difference decides what options your family has. Capacity is a medical concept. It's a clinical judgment made by a physician about whether a person can do 4 things around a specific decision, right? Can they understand the relevant information? Can they appreciate how it applies to their own situation? Can they reason through the options? And can they communicate a choice? That's it. That is what I'm assessing when a family asks me to evaluate for capacity. And here's what most families don't know. Capacity is decision specific and time specific, right? So your father might have capacity to decide where he wants to live, but not to manage a complex investment portfolio. Your mother might have capacity to on a Tuesday morning when she is rested and sharp, and not on a Friday evening when she's exhausted and sundowning. It is not a global switch. It's a moving picture, right? So let me make that a little bit more concrete, because this is the part that surprises people, right? The law scales the capacity requirement to the complexity of the decision. So signing a power of attorney requires understanding a fairly simple idea. I am choosing this person to act for me if I cannot. That is a lower bar than, say, restructuring a trust, which means a parent in early cognitive decline who could no longer run their own taxes may still absolutely have capacity to execute a power of attorney. Families hear the word dementia and assume the door is closed. Often it is not, but it is closing. And that asymmetry, the door still open but closing, is exactly why this episode exists, right? Now, competence is a legal concept. It is decided by a court, not a doctor. When a court finds someone incompetent, it strips their legal decision-making authority. It's sweeping. It is public and it stays in place until a court reverses it. Competence is the heavy machinery of the law. You do not want to be in that room if you can avoid it. Why does this distinction matter so much? Because the window for signing the legal documents is the window of capacity. As long as your parent has capacity, they can sign a power of attorney, a healthcare proxy, a will, tomorrow morning, even if they have dementia diagnosis. A diagnosis is not the same thing as lost capacity. People with early dementia routinely retain capacity to execute documents, and the law recognizes that. But once capacity for that decision is gone, no signature your parent produces will hold up. And at that point, the only road left runs through a courtroom. So when your parent says, not yet, what they do not understand, and what you now do is that the not yet is a bet that window stays open. And look, some families win that bet. Many do not. Part 4, the signs the windows is closing. So how do you know where you are? You watch, not anxiously, not hovering, but look, honestly, here are the signs I tell families to take seriously. None of these is a diagnosis, right? Each of them is a data point. Word finding trouble, that is new. Your parent reaching for ordinary words mid-sentence and circling around them. Repeating questions they just asked in the same conversation without noticing. Money errors, bills paid late or paid twice, unopened mail stacking up, a checkbook that no longer balances when it always used to. New vulnerability to scams or pressure, saying yes on the phone to things they never would have said yes to. Vagueness at appointments. Answers that used to be specific now becoming general, oh, fine, the usual. Their world quietly shrinking, dropping a hobby, a friend, a route they used to drive without ever announcing a decision. If you are seeing 3 or more of these over a few months, I want you to hear me clearly. You are not being dramatic. You are watching the window and everything we talked about in part 2. Move from important to urgent. Still gentle, still respectful, but urgent. And there is one more move that belongs here. Get a baseline. If you are noticing changing, ask your parent's physician for a cognitive evaluation now, framed as routine because it largely is, right? A documented baseline does 2 things. It tells you honestly where things stand. And if documents are signed later, it protects your parent, right? Because there is a clinical record that they had capacity when they signed. That record can stop a future family fight before it starts. I have seen a single chart note settle arguments that would have otherwise torn a family apart. And so, part 5, what happens if the window closes? Now, look, this is the part nobody wants to hear, and the reason I made this episode. What are your options if your parent never signs and capacity is lost? Well, there's essentially one road, and it's called guardianship in most states, right? Conservatorship in some. A court process where a judge appoints someone, maybe you, maybe not you, to make decision for your parent. And I want to be honest with you about what the road looks like, because families are always shocked. It is slow, months commonly. It is expensive. Attorney's fees, court fees, evaluation fees, and many thousands of dollars paid from the family or from your parents' assets. It is public. There's court records, open hearings, your parents' private decline described in documents strangers could read. And it is advertised. It is adversarial by design, right? The court appoints someone to represent your parents' interests against the petition, which means structurally you may end up in a courtroom positioned as a person your parent needs protection from, even when everyone knows you are the person who loves them most. And here's a part that gets me, right? Every guardianship I've ever been involved in as an evaluator could have been avoided by a document that costs a few $100s and takes maybe an afternoon. The power of attorney is the off-ramp from all of this. That is why I push so hard on this, not because the paperwork is sacred, because the alternative is brutal. Since families always ask, let me sketch what the process actually involves, so it is not an abstract idea, right? Someone, usually an adult child, files a petition with the court. The court requires medical evidence, which means your parent gets evaluated, often by a stranger, sometimes by me, right? The court appoints an attorney or a court investigator to represent your parent, and that person's job is to scrutinize the petition, including you. There is a hearing. Your parent may be required to attend. Family members can object, and when they do, the hearing becomes a contested trial with all the cost and damage that implies. If guardianship is granted, the guardian then reports to the court, often annually, with accountings of every dollar. The court stays in your family's life for the rest of your parents' life. I'm not describing a worst case. I am describing the ordinary case. What not to do while you wait is very important, because desperate families improvise, and some of the improvisations are dangerous, right? Do not sign your parents' name to anything ever, even with their verbal blessing. Even with the purest of intentions, that is forgery and beyond the legal exposure. If it surfaces later, it can poison every legitimate thing you have done. Be very careful about adding yourself to your parents' bank accounts as a quick fix. Families do this constantly because the bank teller suggests it. A joint account is not a power of attorney. It exposes your parents' money to your debts and your divorce. It can distort the inheritance among your siblings. It can spark exactly the suspicion you have been working to avoid. There are sometimes good reasons to do it, but only with an elder law attorney's advice, never as a workaround. And do not manufacture comfort with fake paperwork or pretend arrangements to smooth a parent's anxiety in the moment. It feels kind. It is not. It reinforces the anxious loop. It erodes trust when it is discovered, and it solves nothing legally. The kind move is the patient, honest one, even when it's slower. If you are listening to this and you believe the window may already be closing, here is your sequence. 1, call your parent's physician and request a capacity evaluation. 2, call an elder attorney this week. Not a general practice lawyer, an elder attorney. and tell them exactly where things are today. Some attorneys can still execute the documents with appropriate safeguards when capacity is borderline, especially with a contemporaneous medical assessment. 3, document what you are doing and seeing with dates, right? Plain notes in your phone. If you ever do end up in front of a judge, that record matters. And I want to tell you why this episode matters so much. In my work, I have sat with families on both sides of this window, and sometimes in the same week, right? On a Monday, a family who did the documents 2 years before they were needed, sitting in a hard conversation about their mother's care, sad, but, already steady because the authority question was already answered and all their energy could go to love. And on Thursday, a family in a hospital conference room, 3 adult children who all wanted to do right by their parent, their father. They were paralyzed because no one had authority to act, and the bank would not talk to them, and the hospital needed decisions, and the only path forward was a court process their father would have hated. And same love, same good intentions, completely different outcomes. And the difference was never about who loved their parent more. It was about timing. It was about who used the quiet window. Your parent saying not yet is not the end of this story, but it is a chapter with a deadline. Be patient with the person, be impatient with the calendar. Let me give you the whole episode in 1 minute. If your parent will not sign, keep the conversation alive with 4 moves. 12 micro conversations instead of one big talk. Other family stories instead of direct asks. Quiet moments instead of scary ones. And a different messenger, often their doctor, when you are the wrong person to deliver the message. And when the injections come, do not argue with the emotion, agree with it, and give it somewhere better to go. Know the 2 words. Capacity is a medical, decision-specific, and time-specific word, and it is for the window for signing. Competence is legal, court-decided, and the heavy machinery you want to avoid. Watch for the signs. The window is closing. And if you see them, get a baseline cognitive evaluation and call an elder law attorney now. And if the window closes without documents, the only road is guardianship. Slow, expensive, public, and avoidable, which is the whole point of acting today. If you have not grabbed it yet, I made you a free legal guide called The 5 Legal Documents. It walks you through exactly which documents your family needs and what to ask the lawyer for in plain language. Go to the Instagram post for this episode at The Aging Parent Coach and comment the word legal, and I'll shoot it right over. Next week, we are pivoting. We have spent a month on the legal foundation, and now we move to the doctor's office. The episode is called The 3 Questions to Ask Before You Believe Any Doctor. I'm going to hand you the 3 questions I have watched change appointments for 15 years. And I will tell you, doctors answer differently when you ask them. And I should know, I am one, right? So until then, take care of your parents and take care of you. I'll see you next week.